equals spin. The propaganda's win, stress feeding on my tension. My countrymen, they love their fiction. Words are now, it's made with good intentions.
Welcome to 1 or 200, the politics and media podcast. We're here for another weekend current events episode. I'm joined by my co-host Simone. How you doing?
Kia ora, Kyle. I had a pain au chocolat. It was nice. But then Ginny described their cat's diarrhea, and then I felt like not eating it anymore.
Skill issue. Ginny, how are you doing?
Well, as you know from before, my cats had diarrhea. But apart from that, could be worse. I'm gonna go see some horrible films this weekend, so I'm pretty stoked about that.
Fantastic. What kind of horrible? Bad? Like not good
Well,
films or
okay.
like horrible themes?
I don't know if they're gonna be awful yet, but I am seeing the material list after this recording, and I am going to go see a non-horrible film actually tomorrow, probably a Kurosawa film. So
Yay!
Okay,
Sweet
wonderful.
dogs.
Wonderful. Lots of horrible things
mm.
happening in the world. Where to even start? And
Census?
okay, yeah, you've said it. We're gonna do it. That's less horrible. How fucked is this? Because that's a really bad thing.
It's fucked
Um,
up, guys.
so the government, I guess, has decided that we're just gonna not have a census anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and then go to using kind of data to try and figure out who is in the country.
A census is data. I don't understand what any of that means. They're just like, we're just going to hand the keys over to these weird AI companies that will probably like get sold off and or just get scraped by Palantir. What are you talking about? I mean, they had a census in Jesus' time, like in the year zero, literally the year zero. They were having censuses. That's how integral they are to the administration of a contemporary state. Not even a contemporary state. A state. Like the idea that the
place.
government can just not, like, if you are administering or governing somewhere, you need to know vital statistics. The fact that we're going to have this huge hole in history where we just don't, I mean, it's a contemporary problem for us as well, but like there's just going to be a point where they'll look back and be like, yeah, I don't know what the fuck happened here, but like, you know, they decided to destroy themselves for no reason, I guess. We had a dark ages. We had a self-induced dark ages.
It's yeah, as you say, it's like you can only imagine that it's going to go in that kind of horrible little AI direction, right? Being handed off to one of these third-party companies who are really, really evil, like some of the most evil people on the planet. Jenny, from a digital perspective, and as someone who works with a lot of, I guess,
Oh
demographic
yeah.
data, how are you feeling about
As a
this?
digital native,
I'm not fuck off. First of all, never call me. Someone asked me in Japan if I was a digital nomad, and I wanted to actually end everything. That felt so targeted. It was even worse than the one time some guy told me that there was no Chinese menu at his restaurant. So that was fun.
please tell me that these were like hinge dates or something.
I just think that the main problem with this is I think the solution that they're proposing, which is administrative data, which is just a stupid way to say, we're going to ask any of these government agencies anytime we want to know something about you. And the whether or not the agencies will give the exact data is kind of like it hasn't been confirmed. How often the agencies will update that data for you is also unconfirmed. So for me, I think the biggest issue from a purely a data collection perspective is that there's no guarantee that's going to be up to date, right? And also, I think as we know, with access to digital services in general, like people who are Maori and Pacifica are heavily underrepresented. So we run the risk of counting pretty much almost no statistics from like an elder population, whether they're indigenous or they're immigrants. So there are also lots of questions that only the census actually asks people about, which I think they were the only survey, I guess, allowed to ask these intimate questions around like who lives in your house, like what are your dwelling conditions like, also like what are your iwi affiliations, and also like what's your I think your background or proficiency with Te Reo and stuff. And if you can't ask these questions anymore, how do we get that data? Like we are actually gonna fall into a, as you said, a black hole where for the next 5 years we can't collect any data reliably from first party sources about iwi affiliation, about how houses are made up in this country, and also how people live. And it's no coincidence that we're doing it now, I feel, when landlords are getting shittier, prices are rising. Like we now have, I think, what the government has brought back or wants to bring back in a deeper form, no fault evictions, right? So we have all this data for illegal, awful stuff that's inhumane that's happening that we just won't capture because we don't have a census. So regardless of whether it's Palantir doing the data syncing or it's like a local agency or like a Wellington Insights boutique, like I think that morally it doesn't make a huge difference. Like the issue here is not who's going to collect it already at this point. It's that we're removing our ability to accurately report on the consequences of injustice that are happening in this country. And
It's
that's the main issue.
pretty funny how like so many policies of the current government, it's that Scooby-Doo meme and they're pulling the mask off and it's just an attack on Maori again.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really 100% is. Like, I've worked in places which have very particular rules around like multi-data sovereignty, which absolutely will not be rules that any of these agencies that gather data will abide by. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing in this inherent new process which protects multi-data, which protects multi-sovereignty, and also like protects iwi data. I think we're entering an age of misinformation. And if we can't look back and point at data and say, people themselves have reported so and so conditions or so and so affiliations, we're in an age now where you can make anything up, right? All of these companies that will run these data scrapes are all running giant LLMs anyway. All these companies use generative AI. Sorry to break it to you, there are no morally good insights agencies. They are all training their LLMs on your data. So I just think that the phrase that everyone's throwing around now in every single article, quote unquote, the modernization of data collection in Aotearoa, that's just like a really, really nice way to say that for these 5 years of this coalition government, there'll be nothing recorded that's accurate. They can say anything they want, and the media so far has let them.
And if
Like,
you
why aren't we
want,
pushing back on this more? You know?
Not
eh,
even no good insights agencies, not even during Pride Month, Jenny.
No, not a single good trans rights insights agency, even during Pride Month. Like, I cannot stress enough that every single agency in this country is putting your data into a generative AI machine.
and that's why
Okay?
I'm really excited to announce that we're launching 1 of 200 insights.
One of 200 venture capital incubator for good startup ideas.
If it'll get us like a free couple of milli, why not?
Yeah, we
Let's
won't
cut
use
this. This is a
LLMs.
great idea.
We're not evil.
Seed funding.
We've got 7 years of content to check back on us with.
How many rounds can we get through before they realize? I do it. Yeah, it is the thing where you're like, the reason why people, I guess maybe there's a bit more distrust since we're that kind of the people being made crazy during the earlier parts of the pandemic. But I do feel like in some sense people consider the census is something that everybody ought to participate in. There's a kind of social contract about it and it will never be used against you, right? If it is through these, third parties, or even if it were through other government departments, like say MSD,
Oof.
people don't trust them and they are incentivized to lie because otherwise they will destroy your life. Like
Yeah.
your livelihood is dependent sometimes upon fudging the facts. And even if not, there's such a level of distrust that oftentimes a case manager will just read into what you say and make an assumption and mark it down, and then that's the truth. And people, they are very loath to give people their files as well, especially the internal ones. They won't follow the Privacy Act or the OIA. I mean, they're so bad at it because the whole point is like social control with people, right? So there's an understandable distrust of a lot of these organizations, but the census is supposed to be the way of getting that data without fear or under compulsion. And that's going to be lost as well.
That's the intent, right? Like, and there's no other way to read this except as like we want to get rid of this information. We want to ensure that there's not data, so we can do what we want and just claim that we're doing the right thing based on some weird numbers. This is not the first step in this direction. That was when they started removing indicators and reporting around stuff like child poverty, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we're not really gonna measure that thing anymore that we say we're going to try and fix. And the census was already, as you kind of alluded to, the census was already starting to have trouble with its legitimacy. the correct move here, if you're a responsible government, is to bolster the census and make it better. And instead, they're just fucking scrapping it. It's evil. And this is another kind of thing that this particular conglomeration of right-wing parties is hell-bent on, is destroying legitimacy in the administrative state, right? Like it's not just about the data gathering or like targets or making sure that, they're holding to the promises that they made. We already know they're not in a lot of ways. It's about people losing trust in government. There is a direct intent that the far right in particular, parties like ACT, want people to lose trust in the state. So they can say, oh, look, it's big old government again. We should give it out to private companies because you can trust them better than these fuckers. That is like, that is what they're doing. And I mean, I'm loath to go on about the way this shit is reported, but no one picks up like the wider arc here. And this is a continuing issue. It's oh, this one event happened, right? Like, and there's no context for that. And there's no pattern here. We couldn't possibly see a pattern here. It's just one th this one thing has happened.
What an interesting
And that's what
series of
reported by the
dots.
reporters. Yeah, like it's just a series of dots, right? And yeah, you could join them up, but what does that mean? Yeah, very frustrating. Very frustrating.
It is. And I do think that one of the ways that this is quite concerning is that the material effect is that marginalized people become more invisible. So this is a way of almost like meeting white genocide reversal targets, right? Like there is a kind of effect to this that happens that I think we should be cognizant of. This is multiple things happening at once, multiple layers. Other than I think, and many other people can speak to this far more eloquently than I could, is that AI itself has this kind of it's almost not, but not quite, a kind of referent to a hyper object of every catastrophe that is going on in this world, right? This kind of notion that that there is that almost every layer of the way in which like human society is being made unable to exist in the future is metonymically compressed into this little neutron star that is AI, right? In this bloodstream of the world. And I wonder sometimes that like people think that public institutions are inured from this or that they might get the good version of it because they don't understand how the public service necessarily works. I mean, apart from like that, rather than like public servants coming in as graduates and working their way up, that the direct they are treated like corporations, right? Like CEOs get parachuted in from the private sector. They then determine what happens. The public sector is all siloed off since the Public Service Act. Apart from all of that, the culture at the top is a business culture. When I was at MSD, used to see through like the mail system and that there would be all these invitations to the CEs to business conferences, to like ways to maximize profit and this or that. And you would think, well, what interest could they have working in social development, i.e. the welfare state? With that, and the answer is, it is ideological, right? Because it's the whole purpose is to inculcate and to reproduce this kind of ideology. And they already have it in a sense, but it normalizes it within every single public service. And at the moment, I guarantee you, what is happening is instead of those usual conferences, they are all going to the future of AI. They're all being invited to this. They're all going along to this. The questions to a lot of the consultancies that the governments will be reaching out to will be exactly these things, right? This naturalization and normalization of what gets called artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to highlight one last thing as well. Like, I've seen some people write about the census being scrapped as like a positive thing, and these are not people who are like, these are not necessarily outlets or people that I would consider to be like right-wing shills. But I think that the, I guess the opinion that it being cancelled and being replaced with annual surveys is like better somehow. Like I think that to see the census as like the government's way of like knowing invasive things, invasive personal information about you is like misunderstanding the purpose of the census, I think. Like I think people see it solely as data collection, because that's the activity of it. But I think people don't really understand how government agencies and also corporations or anyone needs current population data if we want to be like socially effective. Um, and I think that I've seen a lot of critiques where like, okay, well, it's good. Like, no one should know about what your religion is or your sexuality. And I'm like, I don't think that's the point of the census. Like, it's not, the point of the census is not to gather data and earmark every gay
Yeah.
person in Aotearoa,
Oh, we found this one individual, right?
you
Like,
know?
But if
yeah,
Yeah,
you
like,
do, send the list to me.
yeah, like that's not the point of it, right?
And
Like,
mark down if you can host, by the way.
yeah.
that's not the point of
There's
the
mold in my
census.
room because the healthy homestand hasn't come in. Sorry, Jenny.
No, no, I totally look. If we do have like a secret lesbian list and you work for the government, please also send that to me. Like my DMs are wide open. But I think people are looking at the past rates of censuses being answered. Like I think maybe in 2018, I think it was less than 70% of Pacifica households actually filled it in. And they're looking at that and they're being like, oh, okay, so that means that like the system was broken. And I'm like, the system can be broken, but we can also invest in it to make it better. Like the solution to not enough people of marginalized groups filling the census out is not to bring census data collection or any data collection into a fully online, even more inaccessible space. Like the solutions that are being proposed by this current government for the census or like to replace the census are not solutions that will actually actively positively impact the people that weren't filling that out in the first place. So while I welcome all, well, no, I lie. I don't welcome all opinions on this. I actually think some of them are actively shit and bad. While I welcome open discourse with me in a public forum or the theater of the mind
Thanks, Keir
about the
Starmer.
census, I do want to make sure that people, if you want to approach me with a critique of the census, please do not base it on like all participation rates and be like, oh, like it wasn't great, so we're going to make it even more inaccessible now. Like you can critique it, and there are fully valid critiques of how much it cost, how much admin it was, and also how it didn't really boost Indigenous engagement. But I think we can do that as a country and debate this while all agreeing that the answer to this isn't like AI data scraping, given Palantir all of our country's data, or like basically relying on online portals like RealMe to get information about someone from a decade ago. It's just not realistic.
And I
Why do you
So.
think
have why do you have concerns when Peter Thiel is a New Zealand citizen? He's a nationalist. Jenny. How could somebody who owns land in the South Island be bad? Shania Twain owns land in the South Island. Let's go, girls. Did we forget this? Peter Thiel is one of those girls, Jenny.
Is he?
administrative data trying to find good blood bags.
That's exactly what they're using it for.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to know anything except for like, what's your blood type?
Yeah. The crossover with Simone's list about gay people in Auckland. Like it's like the Venn
That's a list
diagram
for
there is
you,
a
I think.
circle.
But the thing is, I think, this is the administrative data option has been tried in the UK to like great failure. Like this doesn't work. And I guess the other thing I'll just come back to is like why does anyone trust anything this specific government is doing either, right? You just have to treat their baseline as we're trying to destroy things. Like there's no other way to treat it. You cannot treat anything that they do without the context of the wider project. And I want to kind of switch gears over to what the ACT Party has just been doing in the last couple of weeks, or just the last week, which is now making, and this is again, this has been ongoing for decades, I think now, but making daily public attacks against experts, academics, public figures for daring to speak out against the Regulatory Standards Bill, including putting their picture of their face up, um, like telling white lies, I guess I'd say, about what those people are claiming about the regulatory standards bill and calling it regulatory standards bill derangement syndrome, and putting it out on their platforms, over Facebook, over Twitter, straight from David Seymour. Look at this legal expert or this former politician or historian who dares to speak out against me, to speak out against a project. They must be insane, clinically insane in some way, and we're going to ridicule them and attack them in public. Aside from being abhorrent, to be kind of undertaking this the moment he becomes deputy prime minister, uh, this is indicative and a clear kind of step along the pathway which we've been seeing from ACT, particularly since they moved into government in 2023.
I think I saw one of those posters come up on Twitter and I thought I was hallucinating. I was like, this is like someone's doing the onion, right? We're doing like a bit, but it's like legitimately the way that they're putting, I don't say like, it doesn't sound like a gamer, but like you're like basically like doxing someone in a public forum as a politician, singling them out, and like essentially guaranteeing that they get a bunch of unwanted verbal abuse. Like it's just irresponsible. And also I've seen comments, articles about this with comments open, where someone who used to lecture me at Auckland University is in the comments being like really normal and level-headed about it. And people are just like, you're wrong, you're an idiot, can't you read? Like distinguished members of New Zealand academia in the newsroom comment section fighting for their lives, trying to get people to understand what the Regulatory Standards Bill actually means for the country, and it's just not working. And I think I don't ever want to hand it to David Seymour because no one should hand him anything, like just full stop. But I think that he's he's made the smart. I hate saying smart either. It's not smart.
Cunning.
He's he's made the right play, right? He's made the right play because I think his any of the reasons he's giving to support the bill are just unacademic, right? Like he's doing that typical like Republican American Trump playbook of like
Making
these
shit
people are
up.
doctors and smart. Who the fuck cares? Like their truth is wrong. Like to call them deranged in a public forum, that's crossing a line, surely. That's crossing a fucking line. And I think that the way that it's been reported on is very irresponsible. Like, you should not just be publishing full-on quotes from him talking about regulatory standards derangement syndrome without any sort of counterbalance. I know people are like, "Oh, I'm just reporting facts. Like, it's what he's saying." And I'm like, but then now you're just doing free press for the ACT Party if you republish in full these allegations. And I just think it's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have an opinion on like the legalese behind some of the comments we've seen, Simone, but like I think even outside of, reading different sections of the fucking bill, I think I'm less worried about who or not, I guess, is in the legal right of the situation because I think to me it's clear that ACT Party doesn't care. Like it doesn't matter what the letter of the law says to the ACT Party. Like what they care about is smearing someone, smearing people who disagree with them, and they're just running it like it's a dirty American New York mayoral campaign at this point. Like it's bizarre to watch.
Yeah, I wonder who's advising them, I suppose.
This is Jovan Gurren. What? Someone saying,
You
sorry,
say a
what?
couple of teenagers in a top hat, like in a trench coat? Was
That's
that?
literally it. It's like three pimply faced teenagers in a trench coat, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a real adult with a functioning brain." It's terrible.
But
It's
enough
not.
about Crimson Education. Like, I think this, not to do a semiotic analysis of this, but they're like, I'm sad to report that regulatory standards derangement syndrome has struck again. Today's patient of the day is there is something so insidious going on with the framing of that. I'm reminded with the idea that somebody who is, firstly, if somebody is a victim of the day, like if somebody truly is kind of a victim or the association of victimization and victimhood, with being a lesser than person who should be stamped out of society, right? It should be an object of ridicule. We know where this language leads because we've seen it, right? Historically, we understand what the kind of fascist ideology is behind creating this concept. And there is an irony, of course, like hypocrisy means nothing to these people. But of course, David Seymour is whinging and moaning in a national newspaper about having lost a debate because he
Actually,
sucks at
he
debating.
didn't lose it. It was actually his team that lost. I want
Mum
to.
says it's my turn to lose the debate at the Oxford Union. So embarrassed.
What a
Yeah,
freak.
we'll come back to that because I have some things to say about that. But it is worth considering, not to do a semiotic analysis, this kind of, this person is a victim, the idea of a derangement syndrome, and to identify and put the spotlight on a particular person, and to synonymize mental health with being a target of the state is reminiscent, I think, of Foucault's analysis of psychiatric facilities. And there is something worth considering about the way in which ACT is rhetorically making it easier for us to understand people who might be subject to state oppression or in some way are considered invalids or in some way are lesser than, like people who have mental health issues, people who are, victims, we might say as well, as being lesser than objects of ridicule and to dehumanize them so
Yeah.
that we can do anything that we want to them and turning the big eye of Sauron of the state on them when David Seymour is the deputy prime minister. This is deeply concerning.
Yeah, we're not far away from if someone attacks a protester for me, I'll get them off the hook kind of stuff, right?
If you
And
shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, I'll get you off,
yeah,
right?
Wait, what?
No,
like
like
In
I'll get you off
Minecraft.
your charges.
In
That's not what
Minecraft. In Minecraft.
Trump, the like bisexual queen that he is like anybody, I'll get anybody off on the Upper East Side. That's what I'll do. I've done it for many, many years.
I don't like the other thing to keep in mind is like this is a particular way in which fascists operate is to do the whole we're all here for free speech while stamping out free speech, right? Universities keep canceling people and they're not letting all the views be heard. We're going to directly attack academics that disagree with us specifically, right? Like the continual victimhood kind of stuff. The enemy is always weak, and always too strong, right? Like
Yeah.
it's very clear. Like we have decades of writing about this. We know how this stuff operates. This kind of campaign is specifically fits within that framework. It's really easy to see if you're willing to look at it. And we come back to that problem once again that when reporting about this stuff occurs, it is looking at a single instance. It's not looking at the line being drawn back from history to this point, where you can see the shift in terms of how the ACT Party and David Seymour in particular operate, and the other parties in government as well. They're all part of this. But like back in 2023, David Seymour was talking about blowing up the Ministry of Pacific Peoples as a quote unquote joke. And
I was gonna say now he's joking about blowing up the Ministry of Educated Peoples. Like,
yeah, this is what this is, and we know that specifically, once again, when David Seymour and the ACT Party highlight someone in this way, to attack them, they get more death threats. They get more verbal abuse online. This is actively happening, and David Seymour knows that too. He knows that when he does this, those people that he's targeting are subject to greater abuse. And then he's deciding to do it anyway, and he's a deputy prime minister.
this is the rhetorical flip that happens when they don't have power. They go after these people as like the big, strong, scary people and look how, terrible they are and all this sort of stuff. And then when they get in power, suddenly, oh, look at these pathetic weaklings, right? And there is an interim period where they don't quite have total totalitarian power, where it is those things contradictorily that they keep flipping between in parallel because, as Jean-Paul Sartre said, like fascists have the right to play. They know that their answers don't have to make sense,
Yeah, and I want to
I
draw.
don't want to do the whole like gender flip thing that people like. Imagine if like a man said that about whatever it is, but like imagine if the Green Party posted this, and the great irony is that one of their most recent targets was Mitsuri Yatsude. We know what would have happened because not even that happened. Like Marama Davidson saying like, isn't it cool how Whitaker's has put Te Reo Maori on their product? Did this. Can you imagine if the Green Party did that? And like we know what would happen with Te Pāti Māori because it wouldn't just be the like, how dare the Greens do this? It would be these are dangerous radicals who we have to like
They want a civil
take
war.
out. We have to Operation 8, right? Like the thing is, it's not swatting when you run the SWAT department. When you run the police, like it's not called that, but they're still the same 4chan people, right? They're still the same pathetic little incels that they were before they attained power.
Yeah, and I want to take it back to the point that Jenny made around, David Seymour making the right move here, however you want to frame that. Because part of that is if the media environment allows this, right? This is the information structure that we have. The media are more than happy to just platform this. There are enough people in the media who, at the very least, share that framework for understanding the world. And then there are a handful of others or more that are just actively act supporters and happy to like fucking peddle this out. Whether it's at the editorial level or otherwise, you can tell when someone just like completely verbatim just gives you an entire David Seymour speech and calls it an article, right? Like, I'm sorry, that's a choice. That's not just you reporting it. Like,
Yeah,
there's something going on in your brain.
the people who'll give you a free mall pass, like, I just
That sucks.
it is
But
such a thing where, at least, I mean, I don't want to say that this is like the cunning move or whatever it is, because he's playing on easy mode. And we now know definitively that David Seymour is not good at this, and he's not smart at the one thing he's supposed to be smart at. It's embarrassing. He's just gone in a national newspaper and written an opinion column where he's written a little fanfic West Wing dialogue about himself being invited to debate at Oxford, a debate which he lost. Now, Seymour's whole brand is that he was the Wunderkind kind of debate child, like whether or not you might agree with him on the substance or not, he's so smart. He's a smooth operator. He gets it across well. And it turns out when he's not on the easy mode of the New Zealand media environment, he just falls on his own dick and just smashes his face into the concrete and gets wedgied. It's so embarrassing that he's not actually even good at debating. Like, say what this is the thing that I think everybody should be saying about it, because now we know it's true, right? Like, if you're on the left, if you're a liberal at all, even if you're a centrist, at least you should be able to recognize that whether or not you disagree with ACT on its substance, David Seymour shouldn't be the person who's leading it, because he's not competent. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he's not a good enough debater really to be there. It's only because of the largesse of the New Zealand media. If they were to even turn just a little tiny bit, like ACT would be destroyed. So do you really want somebody who's not even good at the thing that's supposed to be his brand leading your party? I think that that's too dangerous. I don't know. And I think he's kind of pathetic.
he's a fucking loser. This is really So zoom out a little bit.
I mean, but
They,
he's used to being called that as well. Like,
oh no, he
like, he's
loves it.
clearly, he wears it as a badge of pride. So
Yeah.
it's not that. It's just like, actually, kid, like, you're not very good at this. He's kind of incompetent.
This entire
And he's a
article
bad debater.
is, he lost this debate, and then what, 2 weeks later, the Herald has given him what he calls a right of reply because he thinks the coverage about him losing the debate was so mean.
He's not mad about it, by the
He's
way.
not mad about it though. And there's this hilarious line in it when he's complaining about Stuff's coverage, right? And look, we know that Stuff is in the pocket for David Seymour. Like, it's actually fucking funny that he's doing this. Nowhere in the article does it explain how the debaters decided, or that my team, not I, lost by a margin of 54 to 46. And you're just like, you little. It's so sad. It's so sad.
I love the part where he says, I almost won as well. Like, my man, you were at the Oxford Union, the university that has the Rhodes Scholarship named for Cecil Rhodes. You were in the brain trust heart of colonialism, and you still couldn't make the colonial argument. You're so bad at this. I think you should just give up. And I think everybody else, I think somebody should be tapping him on the shoulder and being like, listen, buddy, there are like better people than you. I think it's time we let you out of the big boy chair.
It's so funny. It's just like he got shoulder tapped. He's their guy, right? Like, it's not about, and like with so much big corporate stuff, it's not about someone actually being effective and talented. It's about, you're a guy. We've got enough compromise on you. You've got a little bit on us. You don't have any shame. We're gonna make you. We're gonna give you that stardust, right? Like, and hell or high water. We're gonna brute force this. And you know what? When you've got a media environment which is essentially gyring around you, and allowing you to operate in this way, allowing you to attack your opponents without consequence, and when your opponents attack you, to come down on them like a ton of bricks, like it's hard not to succeed, but it's incredibly indicative of just how much of a stepladder this guy gets.
It's so funny. Should we move on to something that's not talking about the same? Oh, unless Jenny, you had something.
Oh no, I was gonna say we could move on to the thing which I'm always on for, xenophobia, if you wanted
I'll
to.
just
Noted self-hating expert, Ginny.
I'll tie up this section with like a quote from Australian journalist David Milner, which I think is relevant to both events or situations, contexts. We kept being told that journalism was a bulwark against fascism, a fourth estate. This is the liberal frame for perceiving the industry's worth, but the reality is the polar opposite. Fascism has been allowed to thrive and could not have done so without journalism. And we more broadly might use the term media, but I mean, we say it pretty frequently. There are single good journalists, there are some good stories, there are some good investigations. We're still right here. We're still exactly where we are, and still the majority of the media is propping up increasingly fascistic rhetoric, platforming, horrific shit, and it's becoming more apparent on the local scale, but the stuff happening around global politics in particular should be setting off alarms for everyone that isn't already, completely on board with the hegemonic project. But let's look at the latest xenophobic kind of issues.
Yeah, we'll come back to the Milner piece because I did want to highlight that. But yeah, xenophobia. So, Ginny, what's going on in the world of being spat on public transport?
That hasn't happened in a while, which is nice. It's always good to get a break from that. Every time like a new strain of COVID comes out, I'm always like bracing myself just in case.
I
But it
think we've
hasn't
forgotten
happened.
about those.
Hasn't happened in a while. But for those who are not like fully caught up, I guess like the Cook Islands have signed a deal with China recently. And I think it's called the Action. It's got a very like Chinese administrative document type name. It's called the Action Plan for Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, 2025 to 2030 bracket CSP. So sticking
I
to
can see
theme.
the granite now.
Yeah, sticking to theme. But in all the press that the PM of the Cook Islands has done around it, he's been super, super clear to mention that, and he said this himself, compliments that this new trade deal complements, not replaces, any long-standing relationships with New Zealand. Like calling out New Zealand specifically, right? And trying to be super clear that this is what all other countries do. Like have multiple treaties with everyone. Like it just makes sense. It's normal. And that China has supported Cook Islands for almost 30 years, so why wouldn't they want to do this? Which I think is great, and I'm happy about that. But that has not been received so well by New Zealand. So they've basically halted funding to the Cook Islands because of this deal that has been signed with China. And so New Zealand has stopped, I think it's $20 million of funding for the Cook Islands. All because, and the reason here given by good old Winston Peters, great guy, is that essentially the short reason for this is that they paused this funding for the Cook Islands because they signed agreements with China without consulting New Zealand. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, guys? Like, what the fuck do you mean you're gonna cut off aid to a country because they just didn't tell you? Like a full state body that governs its own affairs didn't tell you that they were doing country to country to country negotiations. Like, our role is to help if we're asked to with foreign affairs, defense funding, maybe disaster relief, maybe infrastructure. And we had documents signed between us. And the bullshit technicality here they're trying to catch the Cook Islands out on is that signing the treaties with China was a matter of defense and security. And because the Cook Islands didn't tell New Zealand about it, that they're in breach of the treaty conditions. So let me just say, like, it just sounds crazy, doesn't it? Like, in what way does this partnership providing funding from China, be something that's a defense and security risk to New Zealand? What's the only reason here? Like, we've heard this line before so many fucking times. Anne-Marie Brady says it all the fucking time on the long game. Okay, and we all know what the core message of that was. So, what the fuck?
Cook Islands is being turned into a magic weapon for China, Jenny.
I know. The Cook Islands is gonna become like a giant. It's gonna like the islands will like rise out the water. They're gonna become like a giant mystical Gundam held together by high-speed rail that China will give them, and it's gonna turn some fucking lasers on New Zealand. Like, what do we think is gonna happen logistically here, guys? Be so fucking for real.
But I want to ask you, have you heard of
There's gonna be a like Bond villain like Silver living on the Cook Islands. This
Like,
Chinese Bond
seriously.
villain.
Are we gonna do like Pacific Rim now in the Cook Islands? Like, what do they think this is gonna mean? Like, if we've given the Cook Islands $200 million and they haven't built like crazy future tech, what do they think this agreement is gonna mean with China? Come on.
This is such a mafia move as well. New Zealand is like sitting there being like, you come to me on the day of my daughter's hunli. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, being like, you made a move. You made like a deal with somebody else without consulting the Godfather, you know. It's so clear what's going on here. And I mean, good on the Cook Islands for good on Mark Brown, the Prime Minister, for standing up and just saying, like, this is patronizing. And not only patronizing, but you're materially freezing our funding. This is good, was going to be used on our health sector in part. You know, like Cook Islanders will suffer as a result of this, is effectively some form of, since, you know, the Cook Islands is in a kind of vassalage with New Zealand, there is a kind of sense in which these are like soft sanctions, something which you're not supposed to do except in very particular circumstances because they can be considered an act of war under international law, right? Like countermeasures are something that have very particular rules around them. But New Zealand has decided to do this unilaterally, and that's concerning.
Yeah, really kind of aping the United States, right? Kind of good little imperial partner in the Pacific, aren't we? That's pretty foul. And just the lack of pushback, around this. Like the the expectation that this little Pacific island just bows to us, it's
Yeah,
beyond patronizing.
yeah.
You know, it's like, do we actually want a strong Pacific? I mean, like the historical evidence is
Yeah.
no. You know, we want them to be continuously tied to New Zealand's fortunes and exploited by us. And really, that's the economic threat to us, I guess, is if China comes in and provides some of this aid, doing a little bit of soft power, have you heard of this? And helps to make the Cook Islands more sustainable on it, like be able to stand on its own 2 feet a bit more. That's a few less RSE workers we might get.
I have to tell you the story about an IR scholar that I met in Japan after this is over because it just reminded me of
Okay.
something very funny.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Uh,
no.
But yeah, like this is very clearly like part of the overarching kind of Western goals of China encirclement. You know, it's similar. It's our Solomon Islands situation that Australia had last year, beginning of last year, where they just the entire like Australian political scene and media just lost their shit because the Solomon Islands made a defense agreement with China. We're calling to invade the Solomons and stuff. It's just absolutely ludicrous.
That's our slave colony.
Yeah, no, like
Yeah,
this is it,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, maybe if you didn't want to do this, you should have treated them with a bit more respect. You know, maybe you should have actually helped them build something effectively, instead of keeping them on a chain. Well, look, I can't be disappointed because I already expect this of our institutions, right? But yet another mark against the New Zealand colonial project.
Yeah, I think it's so bizarre given how the Cook Islands operate in free association, right? Like they have New Zealand passports and stuff. So you're basically taking preemptive measures to retaliate against your own people, if you think about it. Like it's just ridiculous. Like we didn't want to give them, our government refused to even entertain the discussion of the Cook Islands having their own passports and whatnot and being independent. But they can't, they are, I guess, back in the colonial fold and they're still being punished. Like it's just so bizarre. Like can't we even do the colonial project well? Like what are we actually trying to do here as like a nation? Like honestly, it's ridiculous.
Well, the good
This is the
news
Cook
is,
Islands building a case for the UN that they should be sovereign, right? Like this is quite an
Mm,
effective argument for decolonization and for that to be those to be enforced against New Zealand because
yeah,
this is a
absolutely.
breach of well, this is potentially a breach of international law, right?
it's certainly not looking good for our relationship with other Pacific Islands, I would imagine. It just seems like again, just rank incompetence to be acting in this way. Just take the hit. Like, who gives a shit? Like yeah, we're all big boys here, you know, like Bliss and Peters kind of fucking strutting around. They can do this, they can do that. We'll still give the funding, and we respect our Pacific partners, right? Like, yeah, it's
Rightfully, I think that China's brought it up to New Zealand, particularly in light of Luxon meeting with Xi Jinping, like that there is there is a sense in which we're kind of screwing them around, right? Like New Zealand is a small minnow. We can't be doing this. And China's kind of pointed out, we can do without you, but you can't really do without
Yep.
us. What are you doing? We need consistency. If nothing else, China's actually been quite, I don't know, magnanimous maybe about this because
Reasonable,
I wouldn't
even.
put
Yeah.
up with this. But the fact that they're saying, please explain rather than like, we will
Yeah.
threaten you, which is what the US would do, is helpful for us because we keep getting so many chances, right?
Well, and some other good news, I guess, in this space is reporting on RNZ this morning. Luxon concludes China trip, no evidence of collaboration with the West's foes. Great.
I feel
Cool.
good about that. I feel so good, Kyle.
Nice. I love
Just
that.
like it's just such a wild thing to be talking about. First up, you think that you could just go, "Hey, Chris Luxon, mate, don't worry, you're doing this fucking encirclement, but we're not helping. We're not helping out Iran or Russia or North Korea. The Prime Minister has wrapped up his trip to China, dismissing suggestions the superpower is working with Russia, Iran, or North Korea, as alleged by NATO's top official. Like, yeah,
Uh,
no shit. I mean, come on.
I'm making the world's biggest jack off motion, which to me is a normal jack off motion, ladies. It's such an annoying, it's such an annoying thing for them to be like in the middle of what is ostensibly supposed to be a diplomatic mission,
Yeah.
running the same attack lines, the same
Yep.
xenophobia actively, because it seems like this is doing exactly what China's concerned about, which is on the one hand, New Zealand saying, oh, you're a valuable partner to us. And on the
Sure,
other
biggest
hand,
trading
our
partner.
national broadcaster running interference and saying like, but actually you're an evil, great
Yeah,
big,
keep in
whatever it is.
mind.
What?
I don't know, but to be fair to RNZ, they have said there is no collaboration instead of saying like, well, they could have said something like, oh
Hints
no,
of
they
collaboration.
put no evidence in scare quotes.
Yeah. Oh, they've said no evidence. Oh my God.
It's so funny. And yes, like I just to be clear to any journalists reading this, yes, we are going to nitpick anything like this. You cannot get it right. There will always be room for improvement under the current reporting guidelines. Because this is
This is bare
frightful. Like, why is
minimum.
this
It's
even
not
being brought
even.
up? Like, asked about NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte's recent warning that China is working together with Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Luxon noted a difference in opinion. I mean, fine, okay, great. Like, whatever. I think this is worth reporting on, and this is more to do with the swirling news information being directed in this way. Like it has to be reported on that a Western leader is meeting in China. And these are some of the issues of the day because for whatever fucking reason, the leader of NATO is talking about attacking China. Like, what are you doing? Like, if you ever needed more evidence that NATO is not a defensive fucking organization, like, so you should ask that question, right? But just ludicrous, just ludicrous. What else is there? What else is out there in the world? Um,
Oh, one thing that I wanted to know about this, or perhaps not know about this piece by Milner in the shot. It's called, the headline is WMD 2.0 is so half-assed, be embarrassed for people falling for it. I said I just highly recommend that people read it because I wanted to read just the opening paragraph, which I think is an absolute banger.
Well, I think this is important. Like, this is part of that context, right, around China and the West's enemies.
Yeah,
What the fuck does that mean?
it's always the same kinds of things, and you have to be. I mean, I do want to. I do want to say that I think Milner's right that you have to be really brain dead to believe this stuff at this point when we've seen it being
Yeah,
disproven over
Iran's
and
not
over
my
again.
enemy. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, I've seen the Ayatollah's tweets.
God.
My man said hashtag do the dishes if your wife cooks. Like, I don't know. Anyway, spell it out. It's absurd. There's this freaky little Nazified genocidal colony swallowing Palestine.
Yeah.
82% of Israeli residents are in favor of ethnically cleansing Gaza. 47% of them want to murder every man, woman, and child still cursed with being alive inside the concentration camp. And if you speak out about that anywhere, even in fucking Australia, you might lose your job. Like, this is so good, right?
Yeah, and
Anyway,
and that's still being the case. like 2 years down the line, and not even taking into account the recent like reporting around Iran and the way that it's being normalized by our journalists, people. Again, it's coming back to that point. Like journalism is not something which is going to save us. We cannot rely on our the institutions of the fourth estate or even state institutions, the structures that are meant to protect democracy. They're not there to protect democracy. They're there to hold up the colonial capitalist system. That's what their purpose is. And as that accelerates, as the extremism, the radicalization of capitalist leadership just hurdles like into the distance, those structures which were made for them to control the populace, like this is what they are. Uh, Most of this media is corporatized. Um, they're going to go with them. They're going to help. They're going to protect them. And there is just countless evidence of this. David Seymour being regularly platformed and never being challenged. Ostensible journalists going out of their way to like twist the ACT Party's words in ways that not even the ACT Party meant them to make them sound reasonable. This is part of their role. This is part of what they've been created to do. You cannot say why. Like I do say online, but it's rhetorical. Why aren't the media stopping David Seymour from doing this? Why isn't there more reporting of the National Party being corrupt? Well, because their role is to platform them. Their role is to help keep their power in place. That's it. There's not much more to it.
I haven't thought about that, but I'll put a pin in that because I want to read the second half of the first graph, which is this. Grace Tame, Aussie of the Year, eternally and close friend of the shot, lost her Nike endorsement last week following yet another witch hunt led by the Australian. Tame's sins, publicly believing in the humanity of Palestinians, of course. Genocide. Just do it. Because to me, this speaks about, other than that being a bang and like opening graph, this speaks to the whole thing, especially, I suppose, in Pride Month, where people were saying like, oh, I don't know, like, don't be so skeptical about like Target putting up, pride flags and like corporates being woke and stuff like that. Because the whole point of that was, yeah, culturally, this is where we're at the moment. But as soon as it's not profitable or as soon as capital turns against social openness, it's going to flip. And it has flipped. And we've seen that genocide is, of course, hand in hand with capitalism. It is driven by it. Colonialism needs this, right? And so, of course, these corporations, which you would think have nothing to do with Israel, or, not nothing to do with, but they're not exactly, like reliant on this sort of one small country in the Middle East, is this one like outpost of white supremacy there, is it's intolerable to allow any kind of deviation from it, even recognizing the humanity of the people who are the victims of the greatest crime of this decade, right? It's so infuriating that it's taken until this for people to begin to understand. And even now, I think the thing that I wanted to put a pin in, this kind of comes in here, is that I think we've reached the point where it doesn't matter, right? Before they had to manufacture consent for the Iraq war, and people indeed, were in favor of that war by the time they invaded, right? Whereas with this, people are seeing so often, despite platforms trying to clamp down on it, the sheer horror from the first person perspective, these point of view videos of people in Gaza showing their lives, what's going on, people being blown up, things, intolerable things being done to children, to I'll say adult men as well, because they're also victims, and to women and anybody who is in there, right? To journalists, to the doctors who have seen things that they've never seen before, coming back and screaming and crying for somebody to listen to them, and not being listened to, this kind of a constant stream of heartbreak. And then the agenda setting media sitting there and telling you that up is down, white is black, 2 + 2 is 5. The sheer Orwellian weight of it is, for me, the biggest indicator that it doesn't matter anymore. These institutions know. And so you might ask, what is the point? The point is, you crowd it out when you hold all the official channels of information. You crowd out the truth with lies, and it doesn't matter what the lies are, because you want to make people feel crazy. You want to alienate them from each other, and you want to make sure that the record never says what's actually going on, because there's only really one kind of basic truth to this, but there can be 1,000 lies and they can crowd it out. And that's the purpose of it. I think that they want, at this point, people to understand the mask is off, that there is no democracy. There was never a democracy in America. There was never a democracy in New Zealand. There was never a democracy in Australia. They want us to understand it because they are taunting us and they know that we don't have any power. All we have to do, and I say this as if it's such a small thing, but I think the main task really is prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Because there's so few of them and there's so many of us. And the lives of people in the third world, the lives of people in Gaza, people who are currently under the boot before it goes somewhere else, they're reliant, their margin of survival is reliant on us.
And that's why you have to vote, folks. No, I'm kidding.
That's why you have to do what they were doing
God.
with the Palestine action in the UK. The bravest people, right? Just gumming up the machinery, putting your body on the wheels to stop the machine from turning.
Yeah, because this is their first salvo, right? This is the political leadership is so far divorced from the populace at this point, even in the West. But that gulf is 10 times, magnitudes greater between hegemonic leadership and the global South. And what's happening right now is they're saying we can do whatever we want. And we're doing it to people offshore at the moment. It's not you. But look at the way we operate. It could be.
Oh, in America, it's already come back.
Yep, that boomerang is hitting hard.
With ICE, running drones over the top of Los Angeles, Customs and Border Patrol doing that.
And that level of dehumanization, it's not just aimed at people offshore, right? It's aimed at everyone that they want to control. And that's why we're starting to see that leakage into national politics here. That's why we're starting to see it, because they are operating at that level so frequently around the geopolitical issues of the time. These words are gone. But they're so deep in trying to defend a genocide, trying to defend a Holocaust, that they can't help. They can't help but some of that move over into the way they think about their own electorates. It's just
we've seen that with Holocaust revisionism from the US Holocaust Museum. This is starting this kind of total obliteration of truth, which is a necessity in the final round, when there's nothing else left, when the revenue streams are drying up, when I think that they know that things like AI are just, there isn't a new frontier for anything. All that is left is for everything to slowly shrink and shrink and shrink as capitalism undergoes its paroxysms, its death throes, as it begins to kind of fall into the grave. It needs to take everybody else down with it. Jenny, did you have any crimes to encourage people to do?
I think you've encouraged all the necessary crimes already in Minecraft.
Again, I encourage whistleblowing if you have a list of lesbians in the government.
But also, please, media workers actually talk out about what the editorial decisions being made are, because, even with the genocide in Palestine, a lot of the problem with that has been the lack of reporting or just using syndication. With Iran, it's been openly platforming Netanyahu, who's meant to be the big bad, that even Western media is trying to pin everything on, as an out. Why is RNZ quoting and platforming Netanyahu PR? It's absolutely absurd. Who's making that call? What the fuck is happening in your newsroom? Because I know that even if, journalism is not meant to be the thing that saves us, even if all media has been corporatized and has a role in maintaining power, there are people within these organizations who aren't pieces of shit, right? Who do believe in the values that journalism is sold on, who do believe that this is what it's meant to do, that you're meant to be trying to do something with this to make the world a better place, and you are letting your organizations just tear it apart. Just act and organize.
When we say that this is all connected, it's not in just some abstract sense. I don't know if people necessarily know if you're on Twitter, you know about this. If you're not on Twitter, then mercifully, perhaps you don't have to be subjected to this. There is one city in the United States called New York City. It does happen to be important, but they're having a mayoral race at the moment. There's an upstart socialist named Zoran Mamdani. You might be like, well, that's a big thing for somebody who is, because he is from a Muslim background.
And
For
he has a
somebody,
sexy wife. Sorry, I
and he
mean,
himself is apparently quite good looking, people say. So, power couple. They are like the House of Cards couple, but I guess Kevin Spacey was a bit old
no,
then.
they're calling the House of Cards couple. We don't actually.
But Robin Wright's kind of nice with it, right? They are both best part of Blade Runner 2049. They are both, I think. Yeah, he's from a Muslim background, right? This is a big thing that the nation which kind of made itself crazy over 9/11 and made the official folk devil anybody who was, this kind of Islamophobia was like a national religion in America. And for many people, it still is, and is a necessary part of manufacturing that kind of consent for Israel to be that outpost of white supremacy in the Middle East. But it's worth noting that the person who was the favorite, especially of the Democrats who kind of run the party in this primary for the New York mayoralty, is Andrew Cuomo, the former governor. Now, I don't want to necessarily get into all of his other scandals of why he's a terrible person, because he is, and would be a terrible, terrible mayor. But, New York only ever has terrible mayors. He is one of the people involved in Netanyahu's legal team for fighting against the International Criminal Court warrant, for which there's a warrant out for Netanyahu's arrest. Andrew Cuomo is involved in his legal team. Like, when we and Mamdani, despite the fact that he is running for the New York mayoralty, which has nothing to do with Israel, is constantly being hounded by questions by does Israel have a right to exist? Does Israel have a right to exist? Why did you say Palestine's human? Why did you say that they're people? This constant barrage of this, which has supposedly nothing to do with the office, which says, I don't know, let's have wheelie bins instead of garbage bags or something in the city, several continents and oceans away, This is all connected on an interpersonal level.
And it's made to be connected, right? Because they see it as a leverage. They see it as a way to put pressure on people to control them. Get in line because you're going to have power, and we don't want that power used against us. Because that's the fear, right? That someone who disagrees with the current status quo will have the tools and the power of the state and use it against them. Or use it for the people instead of use it for whatever nefarious means are the current ones of the day.
There must be full spectrum dominance, right?
Yeah. Full spectrum dominance.
At no level of government, they've got a day collar around us. There cannot be any sort of light allowed in. There cannot be any kind of chink in the armor. At any level, people can't be allowed to see that the instruments of government can be used to assist the public, and indeed are supposed to be used for that, if there is any kind of democratic reflection of human welfare that is within the apparatus of state or within the municipal apparatuses, right? It just cannot be allowed, because the whole point is the obliteration of truth. That if there is a kind of standard put up which proves that to be incorrect, then there is an alternative. And it's not that there is no alternative. That is intolerable to them. But I think it's worth considering that it is such a brittle thing, the control, right?
Yeah,
that
they're scared.
there will be chinks in the armor. There will be light that comes through, and all you have to do is just put a little chisel and start hammering away at it, because this can't hold. They cannot have full spectrum dominance. It doesn't exist. It's never existed. People are too complicated, and people want freedom too much. It's not possible.
Yeah. And the fact that Mamdani is as close to an upset as he is evidence of this, right? And that's down to the people on the ground. It's down to people.
They filled a theater. Not a rally with voters. They filled a theater with just the volunteers, 7,000 door knockers.
And that's what we got to do. That's what we've got to do. All right. I think we're going to call it, because we are running over time.
Oh, shit, it's late as fuck. Yeah.
But thank you for joining me, Simone.
Yeah, look, I've talked about the do crimes, but it's all equally important to do gay.
Huh?
Fantastic. And Ginny, thank you as well.
Yeah, no worries. And remember, if you work as a journalist at the Herald or something, you have personal social media. It is on you to retweet things that are factual and true about international conflicts and not to retweet your boss's own work to dunk on them. Can we please stop retweeting right-wing outlets to dunk on them, people? Like, stop giving them reach. You have left-wing content creators and people who are content creators who are, I guess in Philip's favorite words, quote unquote centrists, who are giving out actual information. We don't have to retweet people that we hate to dunk on them. We're better than that, okay?
And you can personally give Sean Plunkett a noogie, so why aren't you?
That's right. Thank you to our audience. Thank you for listening, everybody. There's good stuff out there. It's not just us. It is a growing information environment of people that just want to talk about what's happening in the world from a perspective of reality. So get on board. Listen to someone. Get involved. Start doing a little bit of it yourself. Organize with people and groups that are trying to make a difference. We'll catch you next time.
If artificers are then I'm living a pointless life, but learning all your lessons. Fucking politics, there's no distinction. The road's apart now. It's paved with good intentions, and I'll admit that I'm at a loss for what to say when they criticism cost me ought to stay. 'Cause I live amongst the people every day. This vindictive, forgetful fucking race.